and Kirstin Cohen is a therapist from our UTSC Health and Wellness Center. So yeah, she's gonna share about the practices regarding balancing your work life with your personal life. And now I'll pass it on to our speaker, Kirstin.
So we're talking about work-life balance today, but what does that even mean to you, right? How would you define work-life balance? You can share as many times as you like. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to read out just in case you can't see. So we have time management skills. So we have a few time management here, priorities. So we have a lot of things here about balancing between social life, professional life, personal life, being able to disconnect from work. Yeah. Having a life outside of work, be able to do all of the things you want to do. Yeah. Got a lot of balance here. Know when to differentiate both lives. That's an interesting one. Interesting. Okay, I like that one because I talk about that. All right, maintaining relationships with people as well as yourself. Yeah. And I like that relationship with yourself. It's not always just about, relationships with others. We have a relationship with ourselves. All right. So I'm giving you all a minute to answer questions. So you're going to have to excuse my alarm as it goes off each time. And so, as I said, I sort of think that there's a lot of knowledge that we all have. So I want you to sort of think about yourself, right? I want you to reflect on the types of signs you might notice in yourself that would tell you that work and life are not balanced, right? These can be things you notice at home, at school, at work, or just notice in your body. Procrastination, yeah. Burnout, yeah. Anxiety, exhaustion, sadness, not looking forward to things anymore, not keeping up self-care, yeah. Constant stress, guilt, anger outbursts, yeah, right? And as you're, sharing your answers, but when you're looking at these answers, see if any of these resonate with you, right? Sometimes we know off the top of our head a couple of our signs, but sometimes there are other people that experience the same thing that we are, and they may be helping to jog your memory too, right? Forgetting to eat, yeah. We sort of not take care of ourselves, don't feel like doing anything else but sleep, yeah. Feeling the need to catch up, insomnia, not eating, unmotivation, yeah. Not focusing on our mental and physical health. Yeah, we let some things slip off to the side for sure. Yeah, anger outburst is an interesting one, right? Because we might think the anger is just about whatever we're upset about, but actually it could be a sign that things are not feeling balanced for us. So we're getting, angry more easily, right? Or if we're really, really involved in what we're doing and not taking care of ourselves, we may not notice we're not eating, right? We may not notice that we are, not going to sleep on time. So this is why when I talk about noticing, it's really important, right? Because again, without noticing, how are you going to know you need to do something about it? So now, similar question, but I want you to think about what the people around you might notice that would tell them that work and life are not balanced, right? Thinking about your friends, thinking about your family, thinking about your colleagues at school or at work. Yeah, drifting. Looking lazy, lack of presence, always saying no to plans. Yeah, complaining. Yeah, tired, poor communication, quiet, looking miserable, isolating myself, being distracted, annoyed. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's it's a similar question, but what we're thinking about now is what the people around us might notice. And the reason for that is because what we notice in ourselves is one thing, but when we start to think about how am I looking from the outside looking in, right? Sometimes we don't think about that perspective when it comes to taking care of ourselves. And so this can be a really great way. And if you see anything on here that someone else answered that resonated with you, take that mental note, right? Let this be a list of signs. And the beautiful thing about Mentimeter is that you can save pictures, right? So when this is all done, I'll have all of these pictures. So if there are any, answers or information or anything like that, or a list that you found particularly helpful, we can see if we can get that to you so you can have this as part of, what you want to hold on to when you're done today. Thank you for answering that. So now I'm going to shift it a little bit, right? What are some of the signs that you might notice in yourself that would tell you that work and life are balanced, right? What would you notice in yourself at home, at school, at work that make you be like, yeah, I'm feeling good. Things are balanced. Positive attitude, keeping track of a strong schedule, feeling brighter, being able to have time for yourself, being happier. Feeling refreshed, yeah. Confidence, yeah. Spending time with family and friends. Taking time to do things you love, yeah. So if you see yourself doing the things you love, you'll know, okay, I'm pretty balanced. I have the ability to do these things, right? It's annoyed and frustrated, yeah. What's interesting about that is sometimes we think about what we wouldn't be doing, right? Which is important. But then the question is, if we're not annoyed and frustrated, or if we're not hyper-focusing or anxious, right? What are we doing instead? Right? Because these are the things we notice. It's hard to notice when we're not doing something anymore, but we will always sort of notice what we are doing. Right? So I always think, what would be the opposite? If I was feeling less annoyed or stressed, what would I be doing? Right? Self-care, yeah, self-care. We'll talk about self-care for sure. Okay. So then move on to the next one. Oh, there was one last one. Hold on, I saw it pop up. Let me make sure I got that. Better focus. Thank you. Right. So now, similar question, right? What would those around you notice about you that would tell them that work and life are balanced for you? Confident, happier, yeah. How would someone know you're confident, right? What would they see? How would they know you're happier, right? What might they see? What would a happier you be doing? What would a more confident you be doing, right? Looking more organized and motivated, yeah. And if you're more organized and motivated, you might want to think about, well, what would you be able to do more of, right? Being more organized means our time might allow us to do other things we didn't think we had time for, right? Being able to share your day to one another openly. Wow, yeah. And this might be a hard question to answer, right? We might not often think about what would give people clues that we're feeling balanced. And so, like I said in the beginning, I love questions. So if you don't have an answer, that's okay. Think about that, right? You can write it down if you want to reflect on that somewhere. Seem more excited during conversations, yeah. Right? If we're stressed and we're overwhelmed, right, we may not be as responsive or as excited in conversations. We might be sort of in our head, right, and really thinking about or worrying about the things that are sort of weighing us down. It was like a tough one, and that's okay. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper now. So when we're talking about work-life balance, right, it's almost like these scales. We're holding work in one side, we're holding life in the other. But what are we actually talking about, right? What's in that scale? So thinking about the work side of things, right? What are the sort of work tasks or activities that you are balancing that would be in that work scale? Coursework, yeah. I'm guessing you mean like classwork, assignments, reading. note-taking, lectures, clubs, revision, career, chores, meetings, future planning. Yeah. Going to the office, school, meetings, lectures. Yep. Yeah. And so even things like, having to respond to emails, right? If you're in a club or you're organizing something, you have to keep track of that. Commuting to work. Yeah. That might not be doing the work, but the fact is, part of getting to work, you have to travel, right? And that kind of counts. Yeah, for sure. And so now I'm going to go to the other side, right? What are we talking about when we talk about life, right? We're balancing work with life. Well, what sort of activities and tasks goes into that life scale? Relationships, going out, doing hobbies, yeah. Connecting with myself. So we're going to talk about how to balance these things. We got to know what these things are, right? And what life means to some people, what work means to someone else. That's going to be based on your experiences, right? It's going to be based on your perspective. It's going to be based on what you were taught growing up. And so it's really important for us to kind of get a sense of where everyone is at when we're talking about life. All right, here we go. Living life, getting to know others. Oh, making time to go to the doctor. Spend time with friends and family, self-care, extracurriculars you enjoy, personal goals outside of work you want to achieve. Yeah. Quality time, not doing work. Of course, absolutely. Yeah. It's just like there's work and then there's not doing work. That's it. That's all that matters sometimes. So, yeah. Shopping. Okay. Meeting friends. Thank you. And so what are we really talking about when we say work-life balance, right? The reason why I'm asking this question is because we often have this phrase in our mind. We go, oh, I have to have better work-life balance. I have to have better work-life balance. But when I look at some of the things that you've said, I've heard about being confident, being happier, being able to do the things that you enjoy. For some, it means just achieving certain goals. It means just being able to spend time with the people around you, right? So how you know your work life is balanced is going to be totally personal to you, right? And I think it's really important for us to know that. So there isn't a checklist that says, okay, I have these things in order, so that means I have work and life balanced, right? So this idea of work-life balance sort of presents work as like this draining thing. It's depleting, right? It takes energy out of us. Unfavorable, meaning it's something maybe we don't enjoy doing, something we don't want to do, right? When we talk about work-life balance, it's like we're saying life is the good one, right? Life is favorable. It refills us. It restores us. It's the one we should really be focusing on, or at least seeing in a more positive light. Right. And so the idea is you have to use life to sort of counter the weight of work, right? So you need it to bring it up, because the idea is work is pulling you all the way on one side and we need life to balance it right back out. And so perspective matters, right? Work is a part of life. So this idea of work-life balance already sort of starts with an assumption that work and life are separate, but work is a part of life. And if I'm going back to my example about for one feels draining and one feels really refilling and energizing, for some people, work is the one that energizes them. They love what they do, right? If you're in HR and you work with people and working with people energizes you and you love being able to solve problems and get things done, work might not be the thing that drains you. It might be what you consider life, right? The other side of things, right? Your home life can be stressful. Your personal relationships can be stressful. So it's really important to not think of it as, one is good, one is bad. The fact is work is a part of life. Right? When we talk about life, it's everything, meaning work is included in that. And so what I want to invite you to think about, right? So there's some perspectives, right? So I said in the beginning that I'm coming with a perspective. I'm coming with something that I think I've started to notice a lot of, talking to a lot of students, talking to a lot of people, thinking about my own work-life balance and what that means. And so one of the perspectives I want you to maybe start thinking about, like I said, right? Work and life are not separate, right? Work is part of life. So let's start with not trying to see them as these two separate things, right? And this idea of balance, right? When we say the word balance, we might be thinking, you know, we need to have equal amounts of what's work and we have to have equal amounts of what we call life, right? But sometimes you might have to give a lot of energy and a lot of time to work, right? Because there's a project or there's something that's required of you. Or if you're at school, right? It's finals. Finals is a lot busier than the rest of the year is. And so, you know, work-life balance might mean, you know, you should have equal amounts on both sides, but sometimes you got to give a lot to one, right? So when we talk about it that way, what I'm inviting you to think about is counterbalance, right? So if, for example, you're in a really stressful time and you're doing a lot of schoolwork, right? And you have to do a lot of studying because you have exams. So you're giving a lot of energy on this side. You might have to then afterwards take some time for rest, right? That's why you guys get a break. You get the holiday off after that period of intense work. You get to have extra time off, more than just the weekend, to be able to sort of recover, right? And so we want to think of it as counterbalance, because sometimes we are going to have to give more energy to something, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing if we can find a way to balance it out on the other side. Right. So if you had to do all of these exams and all these finals and you had no break and you had to go straight into the next semester, I would say that that is imbalanced. But the fact that you have to do a lot right now, this is a short-term thing. It's not something you have to do all year round. So you got to give a little extra on the work side. So you're going to have to find ways to balance the little extra care time and lifetime, right? And so what I want to make you think about instead is, instead of it seeing as work and life, right? I want you to think of it as what fills me, what energizes me, what drains me, what tires me, right? What takes a lot of energy out of me, right? Because that's really what we're balancing. So interestingly enough, when somebody said clubs for, I think the question was work, right? And for some students, doing clubs or joining a club or, you know, maintaining that can be energizing. That might not be draining, but for others, it might be draining. And sometimes doing a club can be draining one time and it can be energizing another time, depending on what you have to do. So you really want to think of it as balancing, like one fills and one takes away. And you just want to find some equilibrium here. It doesn't mean it stays perfectly still like this. What it means is, I'm hoping you can still see me on the camera here. It kind of goes up one way and then it goes back up that way. And then sometimes we kind of hover here. This is really what balance looks like. Balance isn't static. Sometimes you do a little more, so we have to give a little more, and then we just kind of go back and forth like that. And if you can think of it that way, then you'll have more, it'll feel like there's more flexibility, and you will understand and not feel bad if you had to do a lot of work for 1 week, but then the next week you took it easy, right? And you're able to have a little bit more balance in the way that your day goes. So that doesn't mean your first week was a bad week or you did something wrong because you did a lot extra work, but did you do enough to refill yourself so you can continue to maintain that balance? And so I'm going to shift a little bit more. And so balance implies almost like, you know, work is here, and when work is done, then I can do these things that take care of me, right? Well, I want you to think about integration, right? So we don't have to wait until work is over or school is over for us to then take care of ourselves. So it's not study, 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 and then rest, 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 right? We study one day, we have a little rest, we study again, we might have a little bit of time with a friend or maybe a phone call with a friend or something like that. We go back to studying, right? We want to think about integration. So we're bringing in little bits and moments of things that energize and fill us throughout the day if we can, or throughout the week or throughout the month or however you want to do it. But it doesn't always have to be all of one is done and then we go to the other, right? So how do we integrate, right? Blend in restoration and energizing so we can have the capacity to do the things that take away our energy, that drain us, that deplete us, right? So when I say capacity, right? If you think about a car, where we have to give our car gas for it to go. If we don't have gas in the tank, the car is not going anywhere. So if we know we have an extremely long road trip, what are we going to do? We're going to fill the tank to the absolute fullest, and then we're going to go. We're not going to go on an empty tank or a quarter tank because we know we're going to run out of gas and we're not going to make it to our destination. And so when I talk about capacity, what I'm saying is how much you have in you to give to the things that need you to give to them. And so what I want you to do, so I'm not going to get you to fill this out. I know I kind of have it up here, but because I'm mindful of the time and I want to make sure we get through everything, I just want you to think about this question for yourself and write that down and maybe reflect on that as you kind of go through the next little while, right? Because if you want to be able to achieve work-life balance, you have to know, like I said, shifting it from that to draining and what energizes you. And then for you to know what that is, well, you have to be able to observe your life and see, right? If you haven't thought about the activities you do as energizing or draining, you might not really know yet. You might have some idea. But if you leave with the question, as you go forward, as you go through your days, start to notice, right? After I did that thing, how am I feeling? Actually, I'm feeling really energized by that, right? So for example, I'm a therapist. I do a lot of one-on-one sessions, but this sort of thing, right, doing a group or a workshop or facilitating is something that energizes me, even though it's in my work day, right? So I had to do this to realize that when I was done, I was feeling like, I'm really glad I did that. I feel really excited and energized by that. But if I just looked at it, I would have thought, well, it's work, so it must be draining. So I'm going to use it as, or count it as something that takes away my energy. Right? So I want you to start to notice what are the things that are draining you and depleting you? And what are the things that are filling you up and energizing you? So obviously we talk about sleep a lot. Sleep is incredibly important. But the fact that sleep isn't the only thing that refills us, right? That helps us to rest. But if we sleep and we're getting good sleep, but we're not doing things that energize us, that excite us, then we're not going to be feeling our best, right? That's when we're going to start to get burnt out because we're doing a lot of things that take energy, but we're not putting anything back in. So that's something that's really important to think about. It's not just, do I get enough sleep? Do I eat enough healthy food or drink water? That takes care of our physical body, which is incredibly important to help us to get through the day. But we also have to look at what are we putting into ourselves in experiences and connections and different things like that that help to energize us. So when I say capacity, right, we have to be aware of what our capacity is. Strategies are helpful and we can put them in, but we have to know when is the time to put it in. And so one of the ways to know that is looking at your capacity, right? So checking in with yourself. What does that mean? It basically means taking a moment in your day, in your week, and just saying, how am I doing? Right? We always say to our friends, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you doing? But do we ever take a moment to sort of turn it inside and check in? I don't always do that. I think a lot of us tend not to do that. And so when we do that, we actually might be surprised at what comes up, right? It's not something that we do and we sort of write it down. It's something that we sort of, take a moment, sit down, check in, and I'm going to invite you to actually try that right now, right? You can close your eyes if you want to, you don't have to, but just ask yourself inside. Just, in my case, since my name is Kirstin, I would say, how are you doing, Kirstin? How are you doing? And I would just sit with that and just notice what comes up. Right? We're in a pandemic, right? That's been tough. even if, a lot of people have found some really great experiences throughout this time, there's also been some really tough experiences throughout this time, right? Everything's shifted. We are doing things online. And so it's taking a lot out of us. We're on screens a lot more. That takes a lot out of us. And so we might be going, and not realizing how much we're putting out. And so when we take that second to just check in, right? How am I doing? How are you doing, Kirstin? Right? Just, you can say, how am I doing? You can say your name, whatever it might be, just to notice. Because you might get something that says, you know what? I think I need to get outside more. I feel like I haven't been outside in a while. I'm missing seeing outside. I'm missing moving around, or I'm missing moving my body. I'm missing talking to my friends, right? So we might not notice, especially when we get really busy. We might just go. We get tunnel vision. We're focused on our goal. We're focused on getting to the exam periods. We want to get it all done. But we haven't taken a moment to just check, is there something I might be needing to help me to keep going? And so, of course, we talk about self-care, right? Taking care of ourselves is something that we always hear a lot about. I feel like there's a whole self-care industry now. It's so different. Self-care, I'm thinking even like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, we weren't really saying this, right? When I started in this work, I don't think I heard self-care as much as I do now. And so what does that really mean? Right? We think about self-care sometimes as doing the things that, are like luxurious, right? I'm going to do my nails, I'm going to get a massage, a bubble bath, or people say, treat yourself, right? Treat yourself, just treat yourself. That's self-care, right? But sometimes we're just sort of indulging in what feels really good to do, but that doesn't mean it's actually taking care of us, right? So sometimes we want to have, a nice treat and a snack and all of that, and we just kind of enjoy maybe some comfort food, and that's okay. And sometimes doing that all the time actually is making us not feel so great. So now we're not really taking care of ourselves, right? So it goes from a little pick me up to now I'm feeling really crappy, right? So really self-care is just any activity that we do that allows us to intentionally take care of our physical body, taking care of our mental wellness, our emotional wellness, spiritual, if you're someone who's spiritual or religious, you're taking care of all of those areas, our well-being, right? And so that even can mean I'm cleaning my room, right? Because when we clean our space, we might notice we feel lighter, we feel better. That might not be something we consider to be enjoyable to do, but the result of doing it helps us to feel better, right? Our space feels light. We feel like we can focus more, because even having stuff around us in our space, when we're working from home, whether it's schoolwork or work, the fact is we are in that space for a very long time. And so if there's a lot of things around, what happens, it's almost like in the back of our mind, we know it's all there and we know we have to deal with it, but we're not dealing with it because we're focused. But some of that energy that we'd be using to focus on our work, part of it is sort of in the background, focused on the fact that this room is messy, right? So I'm assuming you all have phones. And if you have all these apps open and you're not using them, you're just using one, what happens to your battery? Right? Your battery starts to drain. It'll encourage you close those background apps and you can have more power available. So we have a lot of those background apps, right, in our mind in a way. The things that we know we need to do but don't really want to do are background apps that are open, taking up our power and our energy. And so part of self-care might be taking some time to just get some of those little things out of the way so we can free up that energy to be powering whatever it is we want to do in front of us. Right? And so thinking about self-care, like I said before, it doesn't have to be this thing we do after work. We can do self-care in our work. We can do self-care throughout the day. Drinking water, right? Okay, I'm just going to get a glass of water and just have it with me while I do my work. That's self-care because you're nourishing your body. And your body is the thing that you're in that allows you to do all of the things you have to do. So when you're doing work in this body. When you're talking to your friends, you're talking to your friends in this body, right? You are always in this body. And so when we do things to take care of it, it actually powers us up to do the things we need to do. So some of those things, like someone said, going to the doctor, which I love to see because we don't think about that, but self-care includes going to the doctor, getting a checkup, getting our eyes checked. We could be wearing the wrong prescription, right? Straining our eyes. So when we can take care of all of those little things, the energy that would be going to us trying to focus and figure out what's going on gets redirected to whatever it is we need to do, right? So we want to free that up for ourselves by taking care of the little things that we need to do. And that's considered self-care. And so what I can do at the end of this, and I think the organizers can help me, to actually have a nice checklist. And the checklist has all these different areas of self-care and all different examples of the types of things we can do. And I think sometimes it can be helpful just to get a little reminder, but it also breaks it up into different sections, because physical self-care and emotional self-care are two different things, right? And so when we talk about self-care, we often talk about it as this big one general thing, right? Just got to do self-care, but self-care has so many different domains and areas, so it can be helpful to have that. So speaking of strategies, that will be something that I can send out to you at the end. I'm going to put some resources together, and so that can all get sent to you, okay? And so one of the things I sort of want to introduce is this concept of a healthy mind platter. So here's a picture here of a healthy mind platter. So these are just some things that we need for our brain to be functioning optimally, which basically means everything's functioning optimally, right? Because our brain's part of our body, it's powering everything. And so the things we do to our body are going to help our mind, right? So if we're rested and sleeping, our mind is going to be working a little bit better, right? And if our mind is calm, we probably will sleep better, right? So our mind and our body are very much connected. So when we're talking about healthy mind platter, these are things that really impact us on a whole level. I'll just go a little bit into what each of those areas are. I mean, if you want to take a screenshot of that, feel free to, because I think it can be helpful. The idea is, how can we incorporate a little bit of each of these things into our day, into our week, or whatever span of time we're trying to balance out, right? So we need focus time, right? Which honestly, school is focus time. We have to get things done. We have goals we have to complete, whether it's assignment, if we're in co-op, we have projects we might need to complete, right? So there is time that we need to dedicate to focusing and getting some things done and achieving goals. And when we get something done, we get a little bit of a boost. That actually gives us energy too. And so we need playtime, right? We need to allow ourselves to be spontaneous or creative. We need to have new experiences, because that actually helps us to make new connections in the brain, right? Every time we do something for the first time and we start doing it over and over, we're creating new pathways in our brain. So your whole life, you are always creating pathways. That's why the first time you do something, it's really hard and kind of awkward. And the more you do it, the easier it gets, because a pathway has been created and it gets strengthened like a highway. It goes really quickly. We need connecting time, right? We need time to be with other people, ideally in person, but of course, via Zoom or FaceTime or whatever forms of connection we have are just as valuable, especially if that's all we have access to, right? And it's not just people we need to connect with. We also need to connect with the world around us, right? We are part of the world around us. When we go outside, if we just observe nature, we just let ourselves experience the fresh air and the beautiful trees and the weather, we are connecting with nature. So that is very much as valuable as connecting with others, right? That's also really great for our brain too, but it's also great for our overall well-being. It's important to move our bodies, right? I talked about being able to take care of our body because it's what we use to do everything that we do. But a little thing that I found really interesting recently is I learned that, our joints, every time we use them, or like we're rotating our wrist or rotating our neck, you're actually lubricating and keeping those joints fluid and moving. So when we stop doing those things for a long time, those parts get really crunchy, right? So if you've ever tried to do an activity you haven't done in a while, it feels really weird, sometimes really hard. That's because our body needs to get readjusted to doing that. So simple things, rotating our joints. If you were ever in school and in gym class, they made us do these sort of stretches where you would rotate things and make circles. They were doing that because they wanted those parts of our bodies to get the movement that it needed so we could stay lubricated and we'd be less likely to get injured. So this is why those sorts of things are helpful. We're thinking about energizing and taking care of ourselves. Moving our body is one way we do that. So the next one we have on here is time in, right? Time in is just when we get an opportunity to sort of reflect, right? Like I helped you guys with earlier when I said, just do a check-in, right? How am I doing? Perfect example of time in, right? We can also focus on our feelings. So the activity I did in the beginning, I asked you to notice. What did you feel? Where's the tightness? Feel the temperature, notice your breath, right? That's also time in. And these can really help our brain as well, right? It helps us to integrate the brain, which means we have different sides. We need both hemispheres to be integrating with one another. And now we need downtime, right? So we're not focused on anything, no goal. We can let our mind wander and relax, and that helps our brain to recharge. And so what downtime looks like for you can be different, right? And so being able to incorporate downtime along with some of the other ones you've just talked about, these are the types of things that help us to keep that balance. These are the things that help us to be energized. And so in each of those categories, and of course there's sleep time at the bottom, and that one's a pretty obvious one. But when we find activities, right, in each of those categories and we build them into our day, then we're going to be able to maintain more of that balance, right? We're going to be able to take care of ourselves and do the things that we need to do. So like I said, if you want to take a screenshot of that, feel free to. I just think that this can be a really helpful way for you to develop your own platter, right? It's almost like your plate is divided into sections. So I'm going to show you this picture here. It's a cute little drawing of what this looks like, right? So you see the different sections here. There's different amounts of time allocated for them. And each section might be a little bit more or less depending on what's going on for you. Right? And so you want to think about maybe having something like this where you can put in little activities that are for each of those categories, right? So what are things that you can do for physical time? What are things you can do for downtime, connecting time, right? And so I want to encourage you to take these different categories with you. Take some time and think about, maybe you're doing some of these already, right? Maybe you want to incorporate an actual plan or a routine to do these things more. So sitting with this sort of template can help you to come up with different activities to fit in each. And so I was going to ask you to share some examples of some of the things you might already be doing. And maybe asking you to reflect, but because I'm mindful of the time and I want to give you more time to be able to ask questions, I might just skip that. But the one thing that I will say, just for the last point, which is what has gotten in the way, right? Oftentimes, like I said, we all know we need to do these things. Sometimes there's something that's getting in the way of us doing it. Right? It could be we have a hard time saying no to other people, or we have a hard time being able to do it without feeling guilty, right? These are the sort of things that sometimes can get in the way. Sometimes we don't know what to do, right? And so being able to take time to reflect on this will allow you to have some ideas to draw on so that you can incorporate them more throughout your day. I'm going to get you to grab a piece of paper. And doesn't, regular size paper, line, blank, doesn't really matter. Or if you have a notebook, feel free to grab that too. That's perfectly fine. And I just want to give everybody the right amount of time. So if you have your paper, do you mind putting your thumbs up in the Zoom? Let's say chats, not chat, just putting your thumbs up. Thank you. Yep. Okay, got the paper. Thank you. Okay, I think everybody has it. Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do is you're just going to draw one big circle. One big circle. And at the top of that circle, I just want you to write, I can. I am going to give you 30 seconds, maybe 30 to 40 seconds to write as many things as you can do. So before you do that, let me show you what I mean. I'm going to take my paper here. I'm going to draw a big circle. And hope you can see this as I can. And you're just going to write on the outer edge, I can, whatever the things are that you can do. It can be, I can write, I can read, I can laugh, I can walk, I can, make friends. It just can be anything at all that you can do. Okay. I can go to sleep, I can go to work, I can go to school. Literally anything. Okay. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds starting now. Okay, so now I'm going to get you to make another circle on the inside of this circle. And on the top of that circle, you're just going to write, I want to. I want to. And on that edge there, you're just going to write all the things you want to do. And I'm going to give you another 30 seconds, whatever comes to mind. I want to go out to the beach. I want to see friends. I want to write a book. I want to just sleep early. It could be anything at all that comes to mind when you think of what you want. So I want to, you got 30 seconds now. Okay, a few more seconds. And now. All right, you're probably not going to like me, but we're going to do another circle. It's going to go on the inside again. And now it's going to say, I really want to. I really want to. I really want to. Feel free to write along the edge again. And you got 30 seconds starting now. Think about the things you really want to do. And you can take some of the ones that are from the I want to, because sometimes what you want to do is something you also really want to do. And that's okay if there's a repetition or there's duplicates. Okay. Now we're going to do another circle on the inside. Yeah, still going. And I want you to write, I really, really want to. And you can use things from the other circles if you want to. And there we got it, right in the middle. I really, really want to. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay. So you can stop now. Yeah, don't have to overthink it. Unless you have something that's burning or pressing you really want to write down, feel free to write that last one down. But yeah, we're gonna stop it right here. So some of you may have seen this before, maybe some of you haven't. But I am going to play this, and I'm going to make sure that you can actually hear it because I realized I did not choose that option. All right, so I'm going to play it. Just let me know if you can hear, or if you can't hear it, let me know.
These are roughly 28,835 jelly beans. I counted out 500 of them and used those to weigh the rest. In this pile, there's one jelly bean for each day that the average American will live. You might have more beans in your life, or maybe less, but on average, this is the time we have. Here's a single bean. It's your very first day. A special day, but kind of a rough day on everyone involved. Add 364 more and you have the first year of your life. Now, for a sense of scale, here are your first 15 years, 5,475 days, which brings us to the threshold of adulthood. And at that moment, this is the time that we have left. And this is, on average, what we will do with all that time. We will be asleep for a total of 8,477 days. If we're lucky, some of that time we'll be sleeping next to someone we love. We will be in the process of eating, drinking, or preparing food for 1,635 days. We'll be at work, hopefully doing something satisfying, for the equivalent of 3,202 of those days. 1,099 days will be spent commuting or traveling from one place to another, maybe a little bit more if you live in LA. On average, we will watch television in one form or another for a total of 2,676 days. Household activities, like chores and tending to our pets and shopping, will take another 1,576 days. And we will care for the needs and well-being of others, our friends and family, for 564 days. We'll spend 671 days bathing, grooming, and doing all other bathroom-related activities. And another 720 days will go to community activities, like religious and civic duties, charities, and taking classes. After we remove all those beans, this is what remains. This is the time that we have left. Time for laughing, swimming, making art, going on hikes, text messages, reading, checking Facebook, playing softball, maybe even teaching yourself how to play the guitar. So what are you going to do with this time? How much of it do you think you've already used up? If you only had half of it, what would you do differently? What about half of that? How much time have you already spent worrying instead of doing something that you love? What if you just had one more day? What are you going to do today?
Okay. So I just want to get you to look back at your circles here, right? We have all of our I can, I want to, really want to, and I really, really want to. I just want you to think about the I really, really want to, right? I know this video can bring up lots of different reactions for some of you, right? It's asking you to think about a lot of things, right? So I'm going to give you a moment, right? I want to make sure that, if you have a reflection about the video, maybe something you want to share, and if you want to unmute yourself and share it, or you can share it in the chat, right? Just anything that came to mind for you when you saw that video. There goes my glasses. The question of what would I do if I only have one day left is very intriguing but difficult to answer. Yeah. Learn that the moment we have is very precious and it should be spent on the things we will keep forever. Thank you for those shares. So I want to show that video after this activity because, when we look at that, I really, really want to, right? That center part of the circle. After seeing that video, right? Are there things in there that You're like, yeah, like I really want to do that. Or maybe, right? Maybe there's something that isn't there. But when you really think about it, it really should be there, right? Something that you really, really want to do. So I'll give you a moment if you want to add anything to the center of the circle, right? Now that you sort of you see it in this different way. So, I mean, this is not a work-life balance strategy. Like, what's the point of this? Well, the reason I'm, inviting you to think about this is because, again, right, we want to think about what energizes us, what fills us, what really replenishes us, what gives us the energy and restoration to do the things that we need to do, right? And so sometimes, when we just sort of get stuck in the tunnel vision of day to day to day, we just sort of put some things off to the side. Right? But sometimes we need to sort of remember that, you know what? I may not always be here. And sometimes there are things that I would really like to do that would be really helpful for me, right? We worry a lot about what's happening right now. We worry a lot about what people think. We worry about making someone upset or disappointing them. But really, at the end of the day, you may have that one day and you may look at it and wish you had done things differently. Right. And so being able to just think about what it is that you really, really want to do, what would you do if you had that one day left, can be a really helpful way to be like, right, there actually is something I've been really meaning to do. And that sometimes can just be call my friends more, right? It doesn't have to be some big extravagant trip or something that's going to cost you a lot of money. It can just be something you just really, really want to do. Right? And being able to do the things that we want to do is very much a part of our self-care. And as I talked about integration, right? Bringing life into work, work into life, right? Energizing, depleting. We want to bring it all together. They're not these separate things, right? So being able to figure out, is there something we really, really want to do that we can do in the day, right? Is there something that we would like to do that we might be able to, carve some time out and be intentional about doing? And so looking at that innermost circle, so that's I really, really want to, I want you to think about, how can you make it happen? Is there something you need to get rid of? Or is there something you need to do or introduce to make one of these things happen or all of these things happen? Do you need to let go of what other people are thinking of you? Do you need to, let go of the idea that you don't deserve to do the things you enjoy because you didn't finish that one task, right? So if you have work to do, but you're feeling really depleted, sometimes being able to spend some time reading a book you like or watching one episode of a show you like, I'm saying one because sometimes one becomes 15, right? A whole season. But just being intentional about doing one of those little things that you enjoy sometimes can be enough to get you not necessarily motivated, but energized, right? It can be enough to kind of get you going, especially if you're doing it with the thought of, I'm doing it because I want to, and you don't let guilt ruin your enjoyment of it, right? If you're going to watch an episode of a show because you want to just take a moment to space out, watch it and don't feel guilty about it. Just watch it and enjoy it. Because when you're feeling guilty, you're actually not even benefiting from it. You're just feeling the guilty feeling. So at the end of it, you're feeling more drained and stressed because you've been talking to yourself about how bad it is that you're doing this. Instead, you could just be enjoying it and being like, okay, got my little dose of enjoyment. I can move on. It's okay that I didn't finish that homework yet, because after doing this, I feel good and I'm just going to go on to this next thing. So sometimes, when I say we need to let go of something, sometimes there are beliefs that we have that stop us from doing the things that we really want to do or the things that we really should be doing. So I stopped it there because I think that, I want to give you the space to be able to ask some questions. If you have a specific question about maybe a situation or like, how do I balance doing this and this when this happens, right? You can just sort of type it and it'll show up and then I will give an answer. And so some of the strategies and things like that I mentioned, that stuff I'll put together and send in an email. You have the mind platter, you have the different categories of things that you can put little activities in so you can help to make sure you maintain that balance. But some of that may not address the questions you had when you came into this, right? So this is the chance to ask a question and feel free to pop them in. And I just wanted to check in with you, right? we're kind of getting closer to the end. Just wanted to know, have we talked about maybe some of the things that you felt were useful for you and important for you, right? Do you feel like this was a good use of your time to come out this evening and sort of be part of this conversation? So if you want to unmute, you can share how to feel less guilty when you give yourself a break or self-care. Okay. So what's really interesting about that is sometimes when we're feeling guilty, right? We might be feeling guilty that we are, we're letting somebody down, right? Oftentimes that might be a thing. Or we feel guilty like we didn't do enough to deserve a break or to do our self-care. I'm going to go with the guilty one first, or this idea of letting people down. One thing that can be really helpful to put things in context is when we don't take a break, when we don't take care of ourselves, we burn out. And when we burn out, sometimes our body says, we're done. You might get stomach issues. You might find you're getting heart palpitations. You might find that you're so exhausted. And so whatever that might be, right, the body decides and just says, we're done. And when that happens, that thing that you were worried about not being able to do, if you took the time to take care of yourself, you're still not able to do because your body has decided you can't do anything anymore. And so sometimes it can be helpful to think, can I take a break, or can I take some time, or tell someone I can't do something in a way that I can control? Or will I wait for when my body decides I can't do it, and then I can't even plan how I'm going to get these things done? I just won't be able to do it. And now I'm really letting someone down. Right now I'm leaving them with, I'm not available. So for example, if it means I got to drop a course, or I got to take some time off of work, asking for a vacation, or if it's stopping this assignment that you're doing, right? Just to take a break and focus. When you stop because you're choosing to stop, you can refill and you can continue to go. If you do not stop, you will eventually stop anyways, not by choice, because either you can't get out of bed, your body shuts down, something happens. And at that moment, you don't get to control how it happens anymore. And so you have to ask yourself, would you rather be able to take that space and time in a controlled way that you decide, right? You plan it out, or will you wait till your body says no? At which point you will not. It might be in the middle of something that's really huge and important, and you don't have control because your body is done. And so sometimes thinking of it that way, which is the no is going to come one way or another. So either I decide or my body decides. And I will also say, when it comes to taking breaks, especially when doing work, a break is necessary, because when we're really hyper-focused on what we're doing, that can actually take up a lot of energy for us. And that can get us into a very stressed mind state. And a very stressed brain is not a learning brain. It's not a focused brain. A frustrated brain, because you're trying to keep going and you can't get it right, but you can't stop because you have to finish and you don't want to take a break. Being in that mindset, you're not even doing your best work, and it's going to take you longer. So sometimes we got to pull over to the side just to refill, just for that moment, or just to rest and to just come back in again. So that's my thought on that question. Hopefully that was helpful. Sorry. Next question. How can I direct my thoughts to be more positive? So I'm going to start with what I said in the beginning, noticing. So how can we know we need to have more positive thoughts if we're not even noticing our negative thoughts, right? Sometimes we might be thinking so many negative things to the point where we don't even realize we're thinking that. We just feel stressed suddenly, or we feel sad because we're telling ourselves this really sad story. Nobody cares about me. Nobody likes me. And before we even realize it, we're just feeling so down. So the first step to being able to direct your thoughts to be more positive is to start noticing when your thoughts are negative, right? Noticing your thinking as it's happening can be really helpful. And that's why things like mindfulness are really helpful, right? Having 1-minute meditations every day, or 10 minutes or something like that, where you can just sit and practice noticing your body. It's a skill, right? Being able to control where your awareness goes is a skill that we can build. And the better you get at that, the better it'll be and easier it'll be to notice when your thoughts are negative, and then you can redirect it to something else. So we're not trying to make our negative thoughts disappear. They're going to pop up because they're habits, right? Some of the way we think is a habit. But if we can start to notice our mind is going negative, then we can have a counter positive response to that. Nobody likes me. Well, is that really true? Well, no, I have these people that I actually do talk to, right? Sometimes when we're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed, everything is extreme. I'm never going to be able to do this. People are always doing that, right? We really think in those extremes, but most of life doesn't happen that way. It's like most of the time or some of the time. It's never really always or never. So when we notice our thought goes to one of those two places, it might be, oh, I'm going in that extreme thinking. And that might be me getting into those negative thoughts. And then you can be like, well, it's not always, it's sometimes, right? Okay. And if you know it's sometimes, it might feel a little bit better, right? So to answer the question, the first step is to notice it's negative, then to practice coming up with more positive answers to that. Or if you're, really into meditation and mindfulness, or you're somebody who's really good at already noticing, you might be able to just tell yourself, like, your thoughts, they come and go. Sometimes you're not the one that makes them come up. So if a negative thought comes up, you can just say, oh, I'm having a negative thought about this, and then just let it go. You don't have to engage with it. You don't have to believe that what it's saying is true, right? Because sometimes our thoughts are just coming from other places and other experiences that we've had, and it just pops up like a song that gets stuck in your head. You don't tell it to come up. It just pops up, right? So sometimes negative thoughts are just like that. They're just things that pop up. I don't know if that's helpful, but if it gives you any comfort, right? Our mind, like this idea of algorithms, right? We're talking about social media and different things like that, right? That's how our mind also works. The more we think about something, the more that type of thing keeps coming back in our mind. So some of our negative thoughts could just be things we've thought about a lot. So they just pop up because something we're doing is making that thought pop up. But that doesn't mean that that thought is necessarily true. So sometimes people like affirmations, things they write down that they want to remember. So instead of just trying to think of a positive thought, you get to see the positive thoughts around you, right? So being able to have something around. So I like to keep this paper here. It says attune. It's something I like to remember, right? To practice being aware of what's happening when it's happening. I'm tuning into the moment, right? So I like to keep little cards like that around me so I remember, okay, right? You're doing the best you can. Keep going. Remember that your best on one day doesn't always look the same on another day, but you're still doing your best, even if what you produce is different, right? So having those little reminders can be helpful to counter some of those really negative thoughts that might come up. Is there any way for us to push ourselves to do our work without feeling stressed? That's a great question. I think it's about pacing, right? So can we push through and do our work? Yes, but if we're pushing through nonstop, without a break, without a moment to be like, oh, I'm getting tense, my neck, my shoulders, I'm feeling really frustrated. So if we're feeling that, this is where noticing is helpful. If we notice that's happening, we just take a moment to do what we need to do to recharge, even if it just means going outside for a few minutes or something like that. And in being able to do that, you can return back to what you're doing, right? And sort of going in and out, okay? Pushing, taking a break to rest, going back, taking a break to rest. That can help to minimize how stressful it is. It may not be possible for you not to feel stressed, right? Stress is a normal response that our body has, and a little bit of stress pushes us to do things, right? So if you don't have a deadline, sometimes you're just not going to do it. Right? So a deadline is an example of a good little boost of stress that gets us going, right? Stress gets us out of the bed. Oh, the alarm's going off. I'm going to be late. Getting out of the bed. Without that, we're just kind of like, meh. Oh, my lecture's online. Oh, it's pre-recorded. Oh, I don't have to go back to bed, right? So the stress of missing the live class is a little boost that gets us up. So we don't want to, there's going to be stress regardless of how you do your work. It's just, are we in that unhealthy territory of stress? Right? Where it's too much stress that it's draining us and bringing us down. So how do we help with managing that? Checking in and noticing, how is this feeling as I'm going? Do I need a moment to recharge, to come back? And that's how we pace ourselves to get through a lot of the things that we need to do. Oh, I'm supposed to be marking this as answer. Sorry. Oops. All right. Do you have any tips to balance and overcome issues of spending all your time analyzing how you feel inside? Wow. One of the things I think I'll say is it is important to sort of reflect internally, right? And see how you feel. That's absolutely important. I think being able to, if you're someone who has a hard time even staying on track or managing your time and doing something like that, I'm a big fan of timers, right? You can give yourself designated worry time. It might sound silly, but sometimes it helps, right? If you're someone that tends to worry, and you're like, okay, and we worry about the things that are important, right? So when we have all these feelings inside, it's usually in response to things that are important. So we can say, okay, I'm going to designate this amount of time. You can set like 15 minutes, and I'm just going to think, I'm just going to worry about all the things I need to worry. I'm just going to do that. And I know that when that timer's off, I'm going to stop now. I'm just going to not allow myself to keep going. Because what happens is when we know we will get time to think about those things, sometimes it's easier to sort of push them to the side. So whenever we're doing something and the worries come, it's like, oh, that'll go on to my worry time. I will get to that after, right? Just being able to put it off. So we're not ignoring it. We're not saying it's not important, but we are taking a moment to sort of just redirect, notice what's happening, put it to the side and come back to it later. And so I think some people are very introspective, which means they think internally a lot, and that doesn't have to be a bad thing. But when you're analyzing how you feel inside, a clue that will tell you you're out of balance, what do you start to feel in your body? If I'm thinking about that time in grade 3 when I did something really embarrassing in class, and oh my God, why did I do that? Oh my God, I can't believe, and you just keep going. Your chest. Even as I was doing that, I had to take a breath to say my next word because I wasn't even breathing, right? I started feeling tightness in my chest. I was really thinking about a real event in grade 3, by the way. I won't tell you what it was. It was embarrassing, but that's okay. We all have those. But, as I was doing that, I was starting to feel my body start to do all sorts of things. So you will know you're out of balance with your thinking because your body will tell you. You will feel tension. Your throat will feel tight and sore because it's like you want to cry, but you're not crying, but you're trying to hold it in. That tells you, okay, what you're thinking about right now might be going too far off now. Right? So letting your body actually tell you, right? Noticing if you are starting to feel even something like if you're getting angry, and when we're angry, how do we know we're angry? We feel it, right? Emotions aren't in our mind, emotions are in our body. So anytime you're thinking about something very intensely, maybe analyzing how you feel inside or over analyzing it, your body will start to have these different shifts and feelings, and you'll be like, something is happening here. So in the beginning, I said the most important skill is noticing. You can talk to a million different professionals about what's good and what's helpful, but if you don't notice what's happening to you, it's not going to be useful to you. So hopefully that helps to answer a little bit of that question. All right. Oops, I keep doing that. There you go. This really depends on the person and their schedules, but how many days a week do you think is appropriate to take a day off to relax? I feel like I don't want to be a jerk when I say this. It really depends on the person and their schedule. The answer is right in the beginning of the question. But what I will say is this. I'll say that you will know if it's an appropriate amount of time because when you're done, are you feeling restored and rejuvenated from it, right? The work schedule that we currently have of 5 days a week of working, 2 days weekend, sometimes doesn't offer you the relaxation and the full restoration and rest that we need, even though we're told the weekend is for relaxing and the week is for working. And this is why I talk about integration, because we don't always get to take a whole day off. But if we take half an hour in the middle of our day to do something that restores us, that's going to be really helpful rather than waiting till the end of the week where we have 5 days of heavy work with 2 days of rest, right? We have to bring rest into our day. So, I mean, in a week, depending on how much depleting activities you do, will tell you how much rest you need, right? So if you're somebody who's doing a lot of schoolwork and you're studying really, really, really hard, you might not even get any time in the week to rest, but maybe after the next week, you spend a chunk of days resting, right? That's sometimes how we balance it. If we have a consistent schedule, it can be helpful to think of it as, blocking off little chunks of time. So after work, when you're driving home, or if you're done school and you're commuting, how can you make that commuter time relaxing or rejuvenating? Is there a podcast you want to listen to that you enjoy? Is there a book that you can read? Is there music you can listen to? Right? So being able to do these things throughout the day and telling ourselves, this is my me time right now, right? Those moments add up. And so instead of just it being on the weekend, in the week, you've actually maybe had a day's worth of rest built in, or maybe half a day or a few hours worth. Right? So being able to think of it that way might be helpful instead of just measuring it by days and weeks, right? This measurement of days and weeks is just one way we measure time, but we don't experience time in days and weeks. We experience time in moments more than anything else. So being able to incorporate moments in the day, then you're doing your best at balancing. So that's the last question I think I have. And I guess I will stop my sharing and sort of just turn back to you right on time.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you, Kirstin, for doing this as strategies for maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Especially with the onset of pandemic, I believe that many of us have been struggling with stress. So I think it's really important for all of us to schedule time to rejuvenate ourselves. And I would also like to thank everyone who attended our workshop today. If you guys are interested in our future events, please make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and also check out our website. So yeah, thank you, Kirstin, again for the presentation, and also the people who joined us tonight. I hope you all have a good night. Thank you, guys.